Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for tuning in once again. You know we're all about diving deep into these twisted tales. So grab a seat, maybe a cup of tea, and let us know where in the world you're watching from. Today's story, believe me, is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. Without giving too much away, let's just say it's about a betrayal so hidden and so well-crafted that no one saw it coming. Not even our protagonist. Let's get into it. It all begins in the picturesque suburbs of San Francisco in 2021. Picture it. Rolling hills, lush greenery, and homes that scream success. This is where our main character, Mark Trenton, lives. Mark's a 48-year-old tech entrepreneur who, by all outside appearances, has it all. A beautiful home, a thriving business, and a seemingly perfect family. But, as we're about to see, appearances can be deceiving. Mark's got that natural charm that comes with success. A mix of confidence and humility. He's worked his way up in Silicon Valley, co-founding a tech startup that went from a cramped garage operation to a multimillion-dollar firm. But beneath his professional success, Mark is grounded. Family is everything to him. He's devoted to his wife, Sarah, whom he met over 20 years ago when they were both young and ambitious. Together, they built a life that most people could only dream of. Now, let's talk about Sarah. She's 45, graceful, and intelligent, with a sharp wit that made her the perfect match for Mark. Sarah has spent the last 2 decades raising their 2 teenage kids and managing their household, ensuring every little detail of their lives is perfectly curated. From the outside, they look like the ideal family. 2 hardworking parents, 2 honor roll kids, and a life filled with vacations, dinner parties, and a social calendar that would make anyone envious. But there's something else about Sarah. A subtle distance that Mark has noticed recently. She's become somewhat withdrawn, often lost in her own world. When he asks if something's wrong, she brushes it off with a smile, saying she's just stressed. Mark doesn't think much of it at first. They've both been busy, and everyone has off days, right? He tries to stay positive, thinking maybe they just need a weekend getaway to rekindle the spark. Then there's their eldest child, Lily, who's 17 and in her senior year of high school. She's ambitious and bright, with her father's drive and her mother's keen sense of people. And there's Alex, their 15-year-old son, a bit quieter but incredibly perceptive. Alex has always been close to his mom, often reading her moods better than anyone else. Despite his age, he's the one who occasionally brings up the little changes he's noticed in Sarah's behavior, but Mark reassures him it's nothing serious, just a bit of tension in the air, nothing that can't be fixed. One evening, as the family gathers for dinner, Mark tries to engage everyone in conversation. He asks Lily about her college plans, knowing she's been eyeing top schools. Lily lights up, diving into details about her application process. Sarah listens, but Mark notices she's unusually quiet, staring off into the distance. At first, he thinks she's just tired, but there's something else. A look in her eyes that's hard to place. Then, the conversation shifts, and Alex mentions that he saw Sarah having lunch with a family friend, someone named Dan. Now, Mark knows Dan. He's an old friend from college, and though they've stayed in touch, he wouldn't exactly consider him close. Dan's recently moved back to town after a messy divorce, and Mark's felt a bit of pity for him. So he didn't think much of it when Sarah mentioned helping Dan settle in. "Oh, that's nice of you, honey," Mark says, brushing it off with a chuckle, and Sarah gives him a quick nod, avoiding eye contact. But that little detail about the lunch doesn't quite sit right with him. Mark pushes the thought aside. Maybe he's just reading too much into it. But the thing is, once a seed of doubt is planted, it grows. Over the next few weeks, Mark starts noticing other small, unsettling changes. Sarah's phone is suddenly off-limits, always turned face down or tucked away in her bag. She's stepping out to take calls more frequently and using excuses like catching up with an old friend or errands. Mark tries to convince himself it's nothing. They've been married for over 20 years. He trusts her. One night, though, when Sarah leaves her phone on the kitchen counter, Mark's curiosity gets the better of him. He glances at it, noticing a notification from Dan. It's a harmless message about dinner plans, But it raises another question in Mark's mind. Why hasn't she mentioned anything about this? Why the sudden secrecy? He tells himself he's overthinking, but in his gut, Mark senses a shift. Sarah, the woman he's shared his life with, now feels like a stranger. He begins keeping an eye on things not because he's suspicious, at least that's what he tells himself, but because he needs to understand what's going on. Their relationship was once so open, so full of shared dreams and secrets. Now there's a wall, invisible but thick, separating them. Finally, one evening, after another day of strange behavior, Mark decides to confront Sarah. He's not angry, just confused, and a bit hurt. "Sarah?" he says softly, sitting beside her. "Is there something going on? You've been distant." She looks at him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, there's a flicker of guilt in her eyes, but she quickly masks it. "Mark, you're imagining things," she says with a laugh that sounds just a bit too forced. "I'm just busy, that's all." But as she walks away, Mark's doubts grow. As the days go by, Mark's unease only grows. The feeling is creeping up on him in every quiet moment, whispering doubts he's too afraid to say out loud. Sarah's behavior hasn't improved. If anything, the distance between them has grown wider. Every time he tries to bring it up, Sarah deflects with excuses that sound weaker each time. And to make matters worse, she started coming home later, with vague explanations that leave Mark feeling uneasy. Now, Mark isn't usually the suspicious type. He's always prided himself on being an understanding husband. But lately, there's a tension in their conversations, an elephant in the room he can't ignore anymore. And that's when things start to get strange. One afternoon, Mark's out for a business lunch with his colleague, Laura. They're wrapping up their meal, talking over some final details, when she casually mentions seeing Sarah at a restaurant across town. Laura assumes Mark knows about it, but the look on his face says otherwise. It's like time stops. Mark forces a smile, acting like it's no big deal, but inside, he feels his heart sink. When he gets home that evening, he tries to bring it up again, casually testing the waters. "Hey, I heard you were at that new Italian place downtown. Who were you with?" Sarah doesn't even flinch. "Oh, just some friends from the gym. We decided to go for a bite after our workout," she says, her voice perfectly calm. But Mark knows his wife. He can tell when she's lying. That calm demeanor, that's her way of brushing him off. The tension is starting to build now, and Mark's frustration is creeping in. He begins questioning everything. Every late night, every phone call, every time she goes out without him. And then, one night, he sees her on the phone in their bedroom, speaking in hushed tones. When he asks who she's talking to, she simply says, "Just catching up with an old friend." She doesn't offer any more details, and Mark doesn't push further. But he feels the trust slipping away, bit by bit. Meanwhile, Alex and Lily have started to pick up on the tension between their parents. Lily, who's older and more attuned to her dad's moods, tries to be supportive, often joining him in the living room to chat or help him with work. She can sense her father's stress and occasionally asks if everything's all right, but Mark doesn't want to involve his kids in something he himself isn't even sure about. He brushes it off, telling her that things are fine and that he's just been a bit distracted. But deep down, Mark's spiraling. He's torn between wanting to trust his wife and needing to know the truth. He finds himself staying up late, ruminating, wondering if he's imagining things, if he's letting paranoia cloud his judgment. And that's when he decides to take matters into his own hands. One night, after Sarah goes to bed, Mark sneaks into her study. He feels a pang of guilt, but he pushes it down, telling himself that he needs answers. Her phone is right there, sitting on her desk, the screen dark. He takes a deep breath and opens it, scrolling through her messages. Most of it looks normal, texts from family, the kids, friends. But then he finds something, a message thread with Dan. The messages are cryptic, vague enough to seem harmless, but with an undertone that makes Mark's stomach twist. Phrases like, "Can't wait to see you," and "I missed you last time" jump out at him. He reads them over and over, trying to convince himself that he's misunderstanding. But he can't shake the feeling that there's something more going on, something he's not supposed to see. This discovery shakes him to his core. He feels a mix of anger, sadness, and betrayal. Part of him wants to confront Sarah immediately, but another part of him, an even deeper part, doesn't want to hear the truth. So, he does what any rational person in his shoes would do. He keeps quiet, determined to gather more evidence before making any accusations. Because if he's wrong, if he's letting jealousy cloud his judgment, then he could be risking everything for no reason. In the days that follow, Mark becomes something he never imagined he'd be. A man who's paranoid, keeping track of his wife's every move, checking her phone whenever he can, scrutinizing every conversation she has with Dan. It's eating him alive, but he can't stop. And then, one night, his worst fears are confirmed. It's late, maybe 2 a.m., and Mark can't sleep. He's tossing and turning, replaying every suspicious moment over and over in his head, when he hears a faint buzzing. He looks over to see Sarah's phone lighting up on her nightstand. It's a message, and it's from Dan. Mark's heart races as he picks up the phone, holding his breath as he reads the text. "Tonight was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." That's it. The message is like a punch to the gut. Every ounce of doubt he had evaporates in that moment, replaced by the cold realization that he's been right all along. Sarah's been seeing Dan behind his back. All those late nights, the secretive phone calls, the vague excuses. It all makes sense now. Mark feels a surge of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. This isn't just some random fling. This is a carefully orchestrated deception, right under his nose, with someone he considered a friend. He doesn't confront her right away, though. Instead, he slips out of bed and goes downstairs, pacing the living room, his mind racing. He's never felt so hurt, so blindsided. How could she do this to him, to their family? In the days that follow, Mark is like a ghost in his own home. He avoids Sarah, unable to look her in the eyes without feeling a surge of pain. She, on the other hand, acts like nothing's wrong, blissfully unaware that her husband has discovered her secret. But Mark's patience is wearing thin. He can't keep pretending everything is fine, not with the truth weighing on him like a ton of bricks. Finally, one evening, he decides he's had enough. He waits until the kids are out of the house, and he sits Sarah down in the living room. The silence between them is thick, and he takes a deep breath before speaking. "Sarah," he says, his voice steady but cold. "I know about you and Dan." Her reaction is instant. She looks up, eyes wide, panic flashing across her face. For a moment, she says nothing, and the silence feels deafening. "Mark, I can explain," she stammers, but he cuts her off, shaking his head. "Don't. Just don't. I've seen the messages. I know everything." At that moment, Sarah's mask falls. She looks away, unable to meet his gaze. Mark watches her, waiting for some kind of explanation, some kind of remorse, but all he sees is a woman who's been caught, someone who has no idea how to handle the consequences of her actions. The anger in him swells, and he feels his voice rising. "How long, Sarah? How long have you been lying to me?" But she doesn't answer, instead burying her face in her hands. It's as if his question doesn't even deserve a response, as if there's nothing left to say. And in that moment, Mark realizes the full extent of the betrayal. It's not just that she's been unfaithful, it's that she didn't even have the decency to come clean, to face the truth head-on. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with someone who'd love a good story, and let us know in the comments what you think about Sarah's betrayal. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next twist in this tale. Mark is reeling. The truth of Sarah's betrayal is a bitter pill to swallow, and as much as he wants to put it all behind him, the anger and hurt fester, growing more intense with each passing day. He can barely look at her. The woman he once adored now feels like a stranger. He feels torn between confronting her again, demanding answers, and simply cutting her out of his life altogether. But as the days pass, it's clear that this isn't something he can ignore. Every interaction with Sarah is tense, charged with unspoken words. She tiptoes around him, avoiding his gaze, and he can feel her guilt, practically radiating off of her. It's almost pathetic, the way she tries to go about her day as if nothing happened. But the atmosphere in the house is unmistakable. Alex and Lily feel it too, and though they don't know the full story, they know something is seriously wrong between their parents. One evening, Mark can't hold it in any longer. He snaps. They're sitting across from each other in the living room, the air thick with silence, when he finally blurts out, "Why, Sarah? Why did you do it?" She looks up, startled, as if she hadn't expected him to bring it up again. "Mark, Her voice falters. For once, she doesn't have an answer, and Mark can see the shame in her eyes. She's struggling to find words, excuses, anything to justify what she's done. But there's nothing she can say that will make it right. "Was it worth it?" he demands, his voice laced with bitterness. "Was he worth throwing away everything we've built?" Sarah's face crumples, and for the first time, Mark sees real regret in her eyes. "I don't know, Mark," she whispers, her voice barely audible. I didn't mean for this to happen. It just got out of control." The response stings. There's no remorse in her words, just a weak attempt to absolve herself of responsibility. Mark feels his anger flare up again, hotter and more intense. "Out of control," he echoes, his tone incredulous. "That's your excuse? You didn't mean for it to happen." He stands up, pacing the room, unable to contain the frustration boiling inside him. "You betrayed me, Sarah. You betrayed our family, our kids, everything we worked so hard to build. And you're telling me it was just a mistake." Sarah looks away, her shoulders slumping in defeat. She doesn't argue, doesn't try to defend herself, and Mark realizes that she knows she's lost. She's broken their trust, shattered their marriage, and there's nothing she can do to fix it. As the days go by, Mark tries to process what this means for his future. He's not ready to let go of his family, to give up everything he's worked so hard to build. But at the same time, he can't imagine a future with Sarah. The trust is gone, and he doesn't know if he can ever get it back. As Mark wrestles with his anger and betrayal, the tension in the house reaches an all-time high. He tries to avoid Sarah as much as possible, throwing himself into work and spending time with Alex and Lily. But it's clear to everyone that something is deeply wrong. Lily, perceptive as ever, has started asking questions, trying to piece together the mystery of her parents' fractured relationship. Mark wants to shield his children from the truth, but he knows they aren't blind to what's going on. Lily, in particular, seems hurt by her parents' distance, and he catches her sneaking, concerned glances at her mother when she thinks no one is watching. Alex, too, has grown quieter, keeping to himself more often than usual. The family is crumbling, and it breaks Mark's heart to see his children caught in the middle. One weekend, Mark decides to take Alex and Lily out for a day to clear their heads. They go hiking, just the three of them, and it's the first time in weeks that Mark feels a sense of peace. The fresh air, the laughter, and the closeness of his children remind him of the family he once had, the family he thought was unbreakable. But even as they laugh and joke together, there's a sense of emptiness. Sarah's absence looms over them, a painful reminder of everything that's gone wrong. That night, after the kids have gone to bed, Mark finds himself in the kitchen, lost in thought. He's staring out the window when he hears a voice behind him. "Mark, can we talk?" To Sarah. She looks tired, her face drawn and shadowed, as if she hasn't slept in days. Mark hesitates, every instinct telling him to walk away, but something in her expression stops him. He nods, gesturing for her to sit. Sarah takes a deep breath, struggling to find the right words. "I know I've hurt you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry." Mark watches her, his expression unreadable. He's heard apologies before, and this one feels no different. "Sorry?" he says, his voice cold. "Sarah, you didn't just hurt me. You betrayed me. You betrayed our family." "I know," she whispers, her eyes filling with tears. "I was selfish. I made a terrible mistake, and I don't expect you to forgive me. I need you to understand that I never meant to destroy us." Mark shakes his head, the bitterness in his chest rising again. You say that, Sarah, but actions speak louder than words. You didn't think about us, about our family, when you were with him. You only thought about yourself. She doesn't argue, doesn't try to defend herself. And in that moment, Mark realizes that she's finally, truly sorry. For the first time, he sees the guilt etched in her face, the pain that mirrors his own. But even as she sits there, vulnerable and remorseful, he knows that he can't simply forgive and forget. Too much has been broken, and the trust that held them together is gone. Over the next few days, Mark and Sarah live in a sort of uneasy truce. They're civil to each other, even kind at times, but there's an unspoken agreement that things will never be the same. Mark feels himself retreating further, building walls around his heart to protect himself from further pain. And Sarah, sensing his distance, becomes more withdrawn as well, as if she knows there's nothing she can do to make things right. And then, just when it seems like the situation couldn't get any worse, a bombshell drops. Mark's at work one afternoon when he receives a call from an unknown number. He answers, and on the other end is a woman he's never met before. Her name is Lisa, and she introduces herself as Dan's ex-wife. At first, Mark is confused, unsure of why she's calling him, but her next words make his blood run cold. "I thought you should know," Lisa says, her voice trembling slightly, "that your wife and my husband have been seeing each other for a long time. I found out months ago, but I didn't know who you were or how to reach you. It's been eating me up inside, and I needed to tell you." Mark is silent, his mind racing. The full weight of the betrayal hits him like a tidal wave. This isn't just a fling, a moment of weakness. This is something deeper, something that's been going on behind his back for far longer than he realized. Lisa continues, her voice full of emotion. "I'm so sorry, Mark. I can't imagine what you're going through, but I thought you deserved to know the truth. You deserve to know what kind of people they are." Mark barely hears her as he sinks into his chair, numb with shock. He feels as though the ground has been ripped out from under him, leaving him suspended in a void of disbelief and anger. Everything he thought he knew, everything he tried to convince himself of, was a lie. Sarah's betrayal goes deeper than he ever imagined, and he realizes with painful clarity that the woman he loved is gone, replaced by someone he barely recognizes. When he gets home that night, he doesn't bother hiding his anger. He confronts Sarah immediately, his voice shaking with rage. "How long has this been going on?" he demands, his fists clenched at his sides. "How long have you been lying to me, making me believe that this was just a mistake?" Sarah looks taken aback, her face pale. She tries to stammer out a response, but Mark doesn't let her speak. "I talked to Lisa," he says, his voice cold and cutting. "Dan's ex-wife. She told me everything. So don't you dare try to lie to me now." There's a long, painful silence as Sarah struggles to find her words. Finally, she sighs, her shoulders slumping in defeat. It's been over a year," she admits, her voice barely a whisper. "I never meant for it to go on this long. I thought I could stop, but—" Mark laughs bitterly, unable to believe what he's hearing. "You thought you could stop?" he repeats, his voice full of disbelief. "Do you even hear yourself, Sarah? You were lying to me, to our kids, every single day. You were living a double life, and you didn't think it would catch up to you?" Sarah doesn't respond, and Mark feels a surge of disgust. He can't bear to look at her, to be in the same room as her. The love he once felt has been replaced by anger and resentment, and he knows that there's no coming back from this. Whatever they once had is gone, shattered beyond repair. At this point, Mark's mind is made up. He can't keep living like this, trapped in a marriage built on lies and betrayal. He knows that leaving won't be easy, especially with the kids involved, but he's determined to move forward, to find a way to rebuild his life without Sarah. The next morning, he sits down with Alex and Lily, preparing himself for one of the hardest conversations he'll ever have. He explains as gently as he can that things between him and their mother have changed, and that they've decided to separate. He doesn't go into the details, doesn't tell them the real reason, but he can see the pain in their eyes, the hurt and confusion that mirrors his own. Lily takes it especially hard. She's always been close to both of her parents, and the idea of them splitting up is almost too much for her to bear. She tries to keep a brave face, but Mark can see the tears welling up in her eyes, and it breaks his heart. Alex, on the other hand, is quiet, withdrawn. He doesn't say much, but Mark can tell that he's hurting too. They both are. And as much as Mark tries to reassure them that everything will be okay, he knows that nothing he says can make this easier. Over the next few weeks, Mark begins the process of moving out, finding a place of his own where he can start fresh. It's painful, leaving behind the home he's built, the life he's known, but he knows it's the only way he can heal. Sarah, for her part, is devastated, but Mark has no sympathy left for her. She made her choices, and now she has to live with the consequences. If you're as invested in this story as we are, don't forget to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next twist in this emotional roller coaster. Mark's life is unraveling, and though he's begun moving on in small ways, the weight of the betrayal and the family he's leaving behind follows him everywhere. The hurt in Alex and Lily's eyes, Sarah's apologies echoing in his mind, and the loss of the life he thought was secure. All of it haunts him. Every moment feels raw, and every decision is painfully heavy. Yet he's determined to keep going. He begins renting a small apartment, minimal but comfortable, just enough space to start fresh. He's even started picking up old hobbies, throwing himself into anything that might fill the void left by Sarah's betrayal and the end of his marriage. But the pain isn't just his. Alex and Lily are caught in the middle, and Mark knows that healing for them will be far more complicated. One evening, while packing up some of his things from the house, Mark runs into Lily. She's quiet, watching him with a look that breaks his heart. He sees how much this has affected her, how she's struggling to understand what happened to her once perfect family. "Dad," she asks softly, "why are you leaving?" Mark takes a deep breath, struggling to find the right words. He wants to shield her from the truth, but he knows she deserves honesty. "Lily," he says gently, "sometimes things happen that change everything we thought we knew. And even though I don't want to leave, it's something I have to do for myself, and for all of us." Lily nods slowly, not fully understanding but sensing the finality in his voice. She hugs him tightly, and Mark feels a surge of emotion, a mix of love, regret, and the weight of the choices he's been forced to make. He promises her that he'll always be there for her, no matter where he lives or what happens. The next few days are quiet, with Mark keeping his distance from Sarah and focusing on his kids. He tries to be there for them in every way he can, but he knows that their lives have been forever changed, and he can only hope that one day they'll understand why things had to happen this way. Then, one evening, Mark receives an unexpected call. It's from a mutual friend of his and Sarah's, someone who knows about the separation but not the reason behind it. The friend sounds worried, asking if Mark has heard anything from Dan's ex-wife, Lisa, lately. Mark, taken aback, tells him no, and the friend hesitates, as if debating whether to say more. Finally, he drops the bombshell. "I heard Lisa's planning to go public with the affair. She's had enough of hiding and wants everyone to know the truth." Mark's heart sinks. He's been doing everything he can to keep this quiet, to protect his kids from the full reality of what's happened. The thought of Lisa exposing everything fills him with dread. If the story gets out, it won't just be a private matter anymore. It'll become public knowledge, and the consequences for his family will be devastating. Panicked, Mark tries calling Lisa, hoping to talk her down, to convince her to keep things quiet for the sake of the children. But she doesn't answer. He leaves message after message, each one more desperate than the last. Days pass and there's no response. The silence is maddening, and Mark begins to fear the worst. Sure enough, a week later, the story breaks. An online gossip column publishes an article exposing the affair between Sarah and Dan, complete with details that leave nothing to the imagination. The article is shared widely, spreading like wildfire through their social circles and beyond. Friends, neighbors, even colleagues start reaching out, each one expressing their shock and disappointment. And worst of all, Alex and Lily find out. Mark hadn't wanted them to know, hadn't wanted them to see their mother in such a harsh light. But the story is out now, and there's no taking it back. When he sits them down to talk, he sees the hurt and confusion in their eyes, the sense of betrayal that mirrors his own. They ask questions he can't answer, demand reasons that he can't give, and all he can do is offer his support, even as he feels his family slipping further away. Meanwhile, Sarah is in her own private hell. The affair has cost her everything. Her family, her friends, even her sense of self. Everywhere she goes, she feels the weight of judgment, the whispers and stares that follow her like a shadow. She tries to reach out to Mark, to apologize again, but he's not interested in hearing her regrets. In his mind, she made her choices, and now she has to live with the consequences. In the weeks that follow, the fallout only intensifies. Alex and Lily, once inseparable, begin to distance themselves from their mother. They're hurt, angry, and unsure of how to process everything they've learned. And though Mark tries to be there for them, he knows that healing will take time, that the scars of this betrayal will linger for years to come. As for Mark, he's forced to confront the painful reality of starting over. He spends more time with his kids, rebuilding their trust and showing them that he's there for them, no matter what. Slowly but surely, they begin to find a new normal, a new sense of stability that, while far from perfect, offers a glimmer of hope for the future. But the road to recovery is long, and every day is a reminder of the life they once had, the family that was torn apart by lies and deceit. Mark knows that he'll never fully heal, that the scars of Sarah's betrayal will stay with him forever. But he also knows that he has a choice, to let the pain define him or to move forward and build something new. And so, he chooses to move forward one day at a time, one step at a time. The journey is far from over, but for the first time in a long time, he feels a sense of peace, a sense of purpose that gives him the strength to keep going. If this story has kept you hooked, remember to like and share it. And if you're new here, subscribe to our channel for more intense stories like this one. Let us know in the comments what you think about Mark's journey and whether he made the right choice in moving on. In the wake of the public scandal, Mark's world feels like it's turned upside down. Everywhere he goes, people know. Friends who once admired his family now offer awkward condolences. And business partners he's known for years seem to avoid the topic altogether. Mark feels like he's living in a fishbowl, where every choice he makes, every action, is scrutinized and whispered about. But his concern isn't for himself. It's for his kids. Lily and Alex are caught in the storm, trying to navigate a world where everyone suddenly knows their family's darkest secret. Alex, who's naturally introverted, retreats even further, becoming distant and withdrawn. He stopped talking to his friends, avoiding eye contact with everyone, even Mark. And then there's Lily, who seems to be taking it the hardest. The usually bubbly, high-achieving teenager is now struggling in school, her focus and confidence shattered. One evening, Mark comes home to find Lily sitting alone in her room, staring blankly at her homework. He knocks gently, and she barely reacts. Seeing his daughter in this state breaks his heart, and he steps inside, pulling a chair next to her. "Lily," he says softly, "I know this is a lot. I know you're hurting." She looks up, and for the first time, he sees the full extent of her pain. Tears well up in her eyes, and she lets out a choked sob. "Dad, why did this have to happen to us? Why did Mom? Why did she do this?" Mark's heart sinks. He wishes he could give her an answer that would make it all make sense, but he knows that no answer could ever be enough. "I don't know, sweetheart," he says, his voice filled with sorrow. "Sometimes people make choices that hurt the ones they love. But that doesn't mean we have to carry their mistakes with us." Lily nods, but he can tell the hurt runs deep. She's wrestling with questions she shouldn't have to face at her age, questions about love, loyalty, and trust that no teenager should be forced to confront. Mark hugs her tightly, wishing he could protect her from the world, from the pain that has taken over their lives. Meanwhile, Sarah's own world is collapsing. The scandal has left her isolated, with friends turning their backs and social invitations vanishing overnight. She tries to reach out to her former friends, desperate to salvage what remains of her reputation, but the damage is done. The whispers, the judgment, the cold stares, they're constant reminders of the life she destroyed. She's alone, truly alone, and for the first time, she realizes the full weight of what she's lost. In a moment of desperation, Sarah tries to reach out to Mark. She calls, leaving voicemails apologizing, pleading for a chance to talk. She sends long, tear-filled messages, trying to explain herself, hoping for some sliver of forgiveness. But Mark doesn't respond. He's done with apologies, done with explanations. As far as he's concerned, their relationship ended the moment she betrayed him and their family. Then, one night, Sarah shows up at Mark's apartment. She's disheveled, her face drawn, a shell of the woman she once was. Mark opens the door, surprised to see her there, and for a moment, he considers closing it right in her face. But then he sees the desperation in her eyes, the remorse that has finally sunk in, and he decides to hear her out. "Mark," she begins, her voice shaking, "I know I'm the last person you want to see, but please, I need to explain." Mark crosses his arms, his face hard. "Explain what, Sarah? You've already said everything there is to say." She takes a deep breath, visibly struggling to hold herself together. "I know I can't take back what I did, but I need you to understand, I never wanted to hurt you. I was lost, I made a mistake, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." Mark's expression doesn't soften. He's heard these words before, and they've lost their meaning. "A mistake?" he repeats, his voice filled with contempt. "You didn't just make a mistake, Sarah. You made a choice to betray me, to betray our family." Sarah flinches, the weight of his words hitting her like a slap. Tears stream down her face, but Mark doesn't look away. He's done being the understanding one, the forgiving one. This time, it's her turn to face the consequences. "I can't forgive you," he says finally, his voice firm. "Not after everything you've done. You broke our family, and no amount of apologies can change that." Sarah nods, defeated. She understands now that she's lost him for good, that there's no going back. She whispers a final apology and leaves, disappearing into the night, the weight of her mistakes heavier than ever. Back at home, Mark feels an unexpected sense of closure. Seeing Sarah one last time, hearing her words, he realizes that he's ready to move on. He's no longer bound by the anger, the betrayal, or the hurt. He's ready to focus on his future, to rebuild his life without the shadows of the past holding him back. He pours himself into his work, spending more time with Alex and Lily, showing them that, despite everything, they still have a family. Little by little, they start to heal. Lily begins to open up again, her grades improving, her confidence returning. Alex, too, starts to come out of his shell, finding solace in his father's unwavering support. For Mark, this journey has been painful, a test of his resilience, his strength, and his ability to forgive. Not Sarah, but himself, for allowing himself to trust again. And while the road to healing isn't easy, he knows he's moving in the right direction. If you're finding yourself on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like and share this story with others who'd appreciate it. And, of course, subscribe if you're new here so you don't miss the conclusion of this incredible journey. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Mark's decision. Do you think he made the right choice? Let us know in the comments below as Mark begins to close the chapter on his past with Sarah. He's faced with a new, unexpected challenge. The kids are caught in the middle, and the reality of the separation is affecting them in ways he hadn't anticipated. Lily, though trying to rebuild her life, occasionally breaks down, questioning her mother's choices, wondering how everything she believed about love and loyalty could be so wrong. Alex, quiet and more reserved, has built an emotional wall around himself, rarely talking about what happened and avoiding anything to do with his mother altogether. Mark sees how deeply his children are suffering, and it's a painful reminder of how much Sarah's betrayal has cost them. One evening, he takes Lily and Alex out for dinner, hoping to give them a break from the heavy atmosphere that seems to hang over their lives. They laugh a little, even manage to smile, but as they sit together, Mark realizes just how fragile their world has become. They're searching for stability, for something they can count on, and he's determined to be that anchor for them. And then, just when it seems like things are starting to settle, Sarah reaches out with an unexpected request. She wants to see the kids, to explain herself, to try and repair the damage she's done. Mark is torn. On one hand, he knows that his children deserve to hear from their mother, to understand her side of the story, even if he can't stand to listen to it himself. On the other hand, he worries that seeing her will only deepen the wounds that are already too raw. After much consideration, he agrees to let her see them, but only under one condition. He'll be there too. He's not willing to let her manipulate their emotions or feed them any more lies. He wants to make sure that, whatever she says, she's honest with them. Sarah agrees, and they arrange to meet in a neutral place, hoping it will make things easier for everyone involved. The day arrives, and the tension is palpable. Sarah is waiting at the park where they agreed to meet, looking nervous and apprehensive. Lily and Alex approach her slowly, unsure of what to expect. Mark stays a few steps back, watching closely, ready to step in if things take a turn. He can see the hesitation in his children's eyes, the guarded expressions they wear, and it breaks his heart to see how much they've changed. Sarah starts to speak, her voice soft and filled with remorse. She tells them how much she loves them, how much she regrets everything that happened. She apologizes over and over, but it's clear that her words aren't enough. Lily and Alex listen, but they don't respond. They're hurt, angry, and uncertain about whether they can trust her again. Finally, Lily speaks up, her voice trembling. "Why, Mom? Why did you do it?" Her question hangs in the air, heavy with emotion. Mark watches as Sarah's face crumples, her own guilt and shame evident. She tries to explain, stumbling over her words, but there's no answer she can give that will make sense to them. The betrayal is too deep, the damage too great. Alex, silent until now, shakes his head, his expression cold. "I can't believe you, Mom. I thought we meant something to you." His words cut through the air, filled with hurt and resentment. Mark feels his heart break for his son, for the pain he's been carrying, and he places a reassuring hand on Alex's shoulder, offering him silent support. Sarah, overwhelmed by their reaction, realizes that the relationship she once had with her children may be lost forever. She tries to reach out, to hug them, but they pull away, their trust too shattered to accept her embrace. Mark steps in, gently guiding his children away, giving Sarah one last look, a look filled with finality. As they walk away, Sarah calls out after them, but Mark doesn't turn back. He knows this is the end of a chapter, the final closure they all need to start healing. His focus is on the future now, on rebuilding his life and supporting his kids in every way he can. With this painful meeting behind them, Mark and his children begin to move forward. The wounds are still there, but slowly, they start to heal. Lily, determined to find meaning in everything she's been through, throws herself into her studies, excelling in school and exploring new interests. Alex, inspired by his father's resilience, takes up a new hobby, painting, finding a way to express the emotions he's kept bottled up for so long. For Mark, these changes bring a sense of hope. He sees the strength in his children, the way they're rebuilding themselves, and it gives him the courage to keep moving forward. He starts reconnecting with old friends, opening up about his experiences, finding solace in the people who have always stood by him. And then, as life starts to settle, an unexpected opportunity presents itself. Mark's work brings him into contact with a woman named Emma, a kind and understanding colleague who has also been through a difficult past. They start talking, finding comfort in each other's stories, and over time, a friendship blossoms. It's the first time since Sarah that Mark has felt a genuine connection, a sense of warmth and understanding that he thought he'd lost forever. Emma becomes a bright spot in his life, a reminder that, even after the darkest storms, there's always a chance for new beginnings. She brings laughter back into his life, and for the first time in a long time, he feels a spark of happiness. His children notice it too, the way he smiles more, the lightness in his steps, and they're happy for him, supportive of the new chapter he's beginning. As the months pass, Mark and Emma grow closer, and his heart begins to heal. He realizes that, though he's been through unimaginable pain, he's come out stronger, more resilient. He's learned to trust again, to open himself up to the possibility of love. And with Emma by his side, he feels ready to embrace the future, to build a life that is filled with hope, love, and the promise of brighter days. If this journey has touched you, don't forget to give this story a thumbs up, share it with someone who might need a reminder of life's second chances. And, of course, subscribe if you're new here. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Mark's story and how he found the strength to move on. Let us know in the comments below. Months pass, and life begins to settle into a new rhythm for Mark and his kids. The once painful memories have softened, no longer raw but now a part of the journey that has shaped them. Mark's resilience has been a source of strength for Lily and Alex, and together they've built a new sense of family. They still have moments of struggle, days when the scars left by the past feel too fresh, but they face them together, knowing that they've come through the worst and are stronger for it. For Sarah, however, life has taken a different path. The consequences of her choices have led her to a place of isolation, where she's forced to confront the reality of the life she's lost. Her relationship with Lily and Alex is strained, and attempts to reconnect have been met with coldness and distance. Mark knows that forgiveness may come someday, but he also understands that some betrayals take a lifetime to heal. Sarah's story has become a reminder of what she's given up: a family, a future, and a love she once took for granted. Mark, meanwhile, has found a new sense of peace. His friendship with Emma has grown, and he's learning to open himself up to the idea of love again. Emma, who understands his journey and respects his past, has been a patient and comforting presence in his life. They've taken things slowly, both aware that healing takes time, but the happiness she brings him is undeniable. He feels grateful not just for Emma, but for the strength he's found within himself, the ability to rebuild after everything he's been through. One evening, Mark gathers Lily and Alex in their living room. It's a quiet, cozy night, and there's a feeling of contentment in the air. They talk about the future, about Lily's college plans and Alex's newfound passion for art. For the first time in what feels like forever, there's laughter and hope, a lightness that had been missing for so long. "I'm proud of you both," Mark says, his voice filled with genuine warmth. "What we went through, it wasn't easy, but you've both shown so much strength, more than I could have ever imagined." Lily smiles, reaching out to take her father's hand. "We're strong because of you, Dad. You taught us that even when things fall apart, we can still build something beautiful." Alex nods, his quiet expression filled with admiration. "Thank you, Dad, for always being there for us." Mark's heart swells with pride and gratitude. In that moment, he realizes that, despite everything they've lost, they've gained something even more precious: a bond forged through resilience, trust, and love. They may be a different kind of family now, but they're still a family, and that's all that matters. As the months continue, Mark, Lily, and Alex settle into their lives with newfound purpose. They've each grown in ways they hadn't expected, learning that life isn't about the challenges they face, but about how they choose to overcome them. Their journey hasn't been easy, but it's brought them closer, showing them the true meaning of family. And as for Mark and Emma, their relationship blossoms into something real and lasting. They spend weekends together enjoying the simple things: cooking, watching movies, going for hikes. Emma understands him in a way no one else does, and with her, he feels a sense of peace he never thought he'd find again. One afternoon, Mark takes Emma to a quiet spot overlooking the city, a place he used to go to clear his mind during the difficult days. Standing beside her, he looks out over the view, feeling a sense of closure and fulfillment. He realizes that he's no longer defined by his past, by the pain or betrayal. He's found a new purpose, a new love, and he's ready to embrace the future with open arms. For the first time in a long time, Mark feels whole. In the final moments of the story, we see Mark surrounded by his family and friends, a man who has rebuilt his life from the ashes of betrayal and found happiness once again. He's not the same person he was, but he's stronger, wiser, and more resilient. and he's ready for whatever life has in store. If you've been with us on this emotional journey, don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think about Mark's transformation and his path to healing. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button for more stories that dive deep into the twists and turns of life, love, and resilience. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.